They said not to walk the forest road after midnight. Sava went anyway, because the city had filled her head with a buzzing that only trees could comb out. She carried nothing but a thermos of coffee, a bag of colourful pens for any weather, and a pocket notebook. The moon was late, and the road was the colour of old iron. From the ditch came the smell of wet leaves and something musky, honest. When she switched off her phone's light, the dark settled around her like a heavy coat she'd borrowed from an ancestor. The first pair of eyes appeared where the birches thicken, yellow, steady. A second pair to the left. The mind reaches for categories: dogs, deer, danger. But Sava's breath had already slowed, and the fear didn't have time to build its scaffolding.
"Hello,"
she said, because it felt rude not to. The wolves did not move. They did not blink the way guilty animals blink. They held her like a mirror holds a face. And something old in Sava stood up to meet them.
"You don't flinch,"
she whispered.
"I'm trying to learn that."
She unscrewed the thermos cap. The smell lifted like a simple prayer. On a fallen trunk she poured a little coffee, an offering to whatever watched, and took a careful sip. The heat returned her to her own body. She remembered a thing she had once thought. 2 4s back to back make an arrow. She could feel it now, the way her shoulder blades made the fletching, her gaze the point. In the right periphery of her vision, where she sometimes saw a thread of light and thought she was going mad, a thin beam held. It looked exactly like the horizontal line inside the number 4, the supporting bar. She had not put it there. It was part of the architecture of seeing, and tonight it felt less like a glitch and more like a gift. A low sound moved through the trees. Not a growl, something like a question. How? Dogs in the village had always barked that syllable. How? How? The world asking the oldest thing. Sava answered aloud, because there was no one to laugh at her.
"Slowly, with love, without running."
She took another sip and waited. Waiting is a kind of grammar. The wolves stepped forward until she could count the guard hairs on their shoulders. They were not large in the way stories make monsters large. They were exact, paw, tendon, breath. One lifted its nose, tasted her, and decided she was not pretending to be calm. The decision relaxed the night. Sava wanted to kneel, but she stayed standing. A human on 2 legs is its own symbol. To break it now would be to apologize for being here. Instead, she opened her notebook and drew the thing that was happening. 2 1s making a bridge, then a 4, then another 4 leaning back to back until they remembered they could make an arrow. On another page, she wrote to her past and future selves. Stand, see, do not flinch. Elsewhere, other nights she had flinched. When someone said, crazy. When a waiting room door clicked. When a loved one reached for a word like medication and offered it as a leash. She did not make enemies of those memories. She let them sit at the edge of the road and listen, like lesser animals who had not yet learned the song. A breeze moved from the portal of darkness between 2 pines. She did not call it a portal. That would be too dramatic for a night already rich with truth. But she felt how the space opened, as if the world liked how she was behaving and had decided to widen the road by a breath. The wolves shifted. The oldest of them, you can tell by the silver along the spine, stepped past, so close she could hear the soft thud of paw on leaf mold. It did not touch her. It brushed her with decision. The rest followed, silent, a long sentence written without punctuation. For a few meters, Sava walked with them, not in front, not behind, but like a parallel thought. When the pack turned off into the bracken, the last one looked back. You will say that wolves do not look back. You will say that projection is a human flaw. Fine. Sava will tell you only that the last pair of eyes paused, and in that pause, something like a yes was exchanged. Not permission, not ownership, a confirmation. Two ones facing nose to nose, making an M, making a bridge of understanding without the need to count further. She stood alone again on the iron-coloured road. The night did not close in. It acknowledged the transaction and remained. Sava screwed the cap back on the thermos and laughed once, quietly, because laughing was the only body language left that matched the scale of her relief. On the walk home, she passed through a village asleep. A single dog lifted its head and asked its syllable. How? Sava answered with a whisper it would not understand and would somehow obey anyway.
Love, accept, forgive. Why? And then walk.
At the gate, she noticed the small triangle of light on her doorstep. Just the warmth that welcomed her each night and reminded her of a good, even if unreal, childhood. But these days, it often carried a much further meaning. God, heaven, spirit, human, hell, matter, depending on where you stood. Tonight it looked especially deliberate, half a bead of light placed where a wandering soul could find it. She stepped into it. It warmed the bones of her foot through her shoe. There are nights when symbolism is not metaphor but weather. Later, when her thermos was already cleaned and dried, she noted down a few more meanings she had brought from the forest and pinned a couple of pages from the notebook to her wall. The triangles, the doubled fours, the arrow. At the top she wrote, "1 is the loneliest number, unless it imagines a mirror." Morning would bring emails, opinions, instructions, agendas with bullet points shaped like arrows that don't point anywhere. Morning would bring people who loved her loudly and poorly. Morning would bring a question she would have to answer with her back straight and her eyes clear. But for now, the forest had combed the city's buzzing out of her mind, and she could hear again the older music. Breath, leaf, paw. The beam in her eye softened to a thread and then to nothing, not because it had gone, but because she no longer needed proof. Somewhere beyond the houses, wolves settled into the damp ferns and slept like beings who had not learned the word crazy. Sava lay down in her own bed and did the same. If anyone asked her later how she did it, she would say the only true thing.
I met witnesses who didn't flinch, and I learned their language.